the DJI Pocket 3. The too long didn't watch version, it's pretty great. At the end of 2018, I bought my first drone, the Mavic 2 Pro, and I loved the image it produced from its 13.2 by 8.8mm 1-inch sensor. The image from this drone had a lovely natural look to me, while the 10-bit log encoding gave a lot of grading flexibility in post. I really liked the image that came out of this drone, and because of that reason, I still have this Mavic 2 Pro. At the same time as having that drone, I had the original DJI Pocket with its lovely stabilized camera. It was an incredibly convenient video camera, but it was hampered with image quality issues as it was basically just a phone camera on a gimbal. And the image was never that great from it. I brought it to Vietnam in 2019, but I actually sold the camera soon after. The main issue for me on the original Pocket and Pocket 2 was that the video quality was a real mixed bag. More likely, I just didn't know how to get a decent image out of it at the time. Either way, I didn't use it much because I had my phone on me, which did just as good video. Or it did do just as good video until AI overprocessing was added over the last couple of years, destroying the image, making it absolutely worthless, and now I can't shoot on my phone anymore. Thanks, Google. Ever since then, I have imagined the perfect small travel video camera with the Mavic 2 Pro's camera and gimbal, with that beautiful 1-inch sensor and 10-bit log recording slapped onto a handle like the DJI Pocket. And over the years, I've tried to find this mythical, convenient, small travel camera. I tried the Sony compact cameras, I've tried action cameras, and even tried the Nikon Z30. Unfortunately, none of the cameras were sufficient for the quick walking and panning shots I wanted to take. Either the stabilization could not keep up, or the image quality broke in half outside of full daylight. After 5 years, however, DJI did make my perfect travel camera in terms of having the equivalent of the Mavic 2 Pro gimbal slapped onto a handle with the Pocket 3. Just in time for my trip to Kenya. So of course I ordered it straight away without watching any non-sponsored reviews because they just didn't exist yet. It arrived the day before my flight, and after a quick test to make sure it was all in working order, it was in the bag to film Africa. Video. The DJI Pocket 3 is an incredibly popular little camera given the amount of these things I've seen at tourist sites, and this little camera is everywhere. I have now had mine for over a year now, and I have been extremely happy with it. The Pocket 3 has been with me on multiple trips and has been used very heavily in my videos. Something like 80% of the outdoor shots in my videos are filmed on the Pocket 3. It completely replaced the need for an APS-C B camera like the Z30. In fact, it practically replaced the idea of a small compact video camera entirely, particularly when you pair it with the DJI Mic 2, but we'll get to that later. For a camera like this, there tends to be two camps of people that want these. The first group are the kind of people who link it to a phone so they can edit it and upload directly to social media. I don't do that. I fall into the second camp of people who edit their footage properly in an NLE like DaVinci Resolve and don't use the app at all with the Pocket 3. So that is why I'll be focusing on shooting to edit the footage afterwards in a proper NLE. I very, very rarely do direct uploads from the Pocket 3 to my phone. So let's start. So the Pocket 3 has a 1-inch sensor that can record up to 4K 60 in 10-bit D-Log-M, and the image from the Pocket 3 is absolutely lovely once you channel your inner Philip Bloom and set the sharpness and noise reduction both to -2. This is required for any camera to be useful, particularly small sensored cameras like this one. If you need to add sharpness or noise reduction, you can do it in post very easily. The reason you don't do it in camera is because noise reduction will break down the image detail and can soften things and make things look really bad. And if you have sharpness in camera, it often sharpens the compression artifacts and it ends up looking hideous as well. So make sure you have your noise reduction and your sharpening set to -2 and do it in post. You'll get much better results from this if you do so. So back to the Pocket 3, apart from the nice image, the other big selling point is of course the gimbal, which mechanically stabilizes the camera, making it superior to any fancy electronic IBIS or VR system. Nothing beats a gimbal for stabilization, and having one this compact and small is absolutely lovely. It gets beautiful stable footage every single time, no matter the conditions. Unlike a lot of electronic stabilization systems which start to get filled with artifacts and get really jittery if the light level falls too much. The screen on the back of the Pocket 3 is a lovely little 2-inch rotating screen, which is great, as the 1-inch screen on the original Pocket was really fiddly to use. This was even for somebody with good eyesight. So having a much larger rotating 2-inch screen is actually really nice. And the rotating nature of the screen also helps you with composing vertical video. Although why you'd want to shoot vertical is kind of beyond me. But in vertical shooting mode, if you like that kind of thing, the Pocket 3 can record the full resolution of the sensor vertically, which means it is limited to 3K as the sensor is 3072 pixels tall. But if you are going to shoot vertical video, this is the best way to do it, as it gives the widest possible field of view and highest resolution. Cropping the normal horizontal 4K video limits it to 2K vertically. Now, one thing I really do wish the Pocket 3 had was an open gate shooting mode. It would be ideal for everybody because then you could choose the aspect ratio in post. But alas, we are limited to a 1:1 aspect ratio. But if you shoot with this and try to crop it horizontally, it limits you to 3K instead of 4K, so it's kind of worthless for that. Now, because this is a mechanically stabilized camera, you can actually set your shutter speed to anything you like without affecting the stabilization. A lot of the electronic stabilization systems, like the Rocksteady in DJI's Action series or Insta360's Flow State, start to get really jittery when the shutter speed falls too low on these cameras. So if you put like really strong ND filters on them, it does kind of cause the stabilization to fall apart, and that can be a real pain in the ass. However, because the Pocket 3 is mechanically stabilized, this lets you use ND filters on the Pocket 3 to control your exposure and get that sweet cinematic 180-degree shutter angle. Now, if you're going to buy ND filters for your Pocket 3, make sure to get a set that goes up to ND64 at least. Now, the reason you want a really strong ND filter is because this has a fixed aperture at f2, which is great for low light conditions, but in very bright daylight, it can be an issue. I have had to set the shutter speed to like 1/100th a second a few times with an ND64 on the camera to control the exposure in those super bright daylight conditions. Now, when you're buying filters, make sure to get ones that explicitly allow the gimbal to close with the filter still on. I use the solid NDs from Start or C, or the K&F Concept ND polarizing filters, which also work. Also, make sure to carry a cleaning cloth with you because these damn filters are so small and fiddly, you are going to get fingerprints all over them and need to clean them regularly. Now, when it comes to different types of filters you can get, there are variable NDs, but I don't really use those variable NDs on this, as being able to control the polarization angle is super important for me, as I shoot a lot in bright midday sun when I'm traveling, and if you want to get those nice saturated images, you really do need to have a polarizer on this in the middle of the day. So that's why I like using the ND polarizing filters, because it gives me the benefits of ND and polarization control. Also, having control over the polarization angle is super important when shooting through glass, because sometimes when you're shooting that way, you can get these weird rainbow artifacts with variable NDs. However, that being said, I do actually keep a variable ND in the Pocket Tree's case for emergencies, for when I actually forget my filter set. It has saved me more than once. Outside of the normal shooting modes, the Pocket Tree does have slow motion and low light video modes. However, I don't really use either of them. I find that they compromise image quality too much. The low light mode is limited to using the standard Rec 709 color profiles, and I think it overprocesses the image way too much. Most of the time you're better off just recording in the normal video mode and doing the processing yourself. Now in the slow motion shooting mode, you can actually shoot at 4K 120, which is really good. It also has the log color profile, which is really nice as well. But I have found it can stretch the low bitrate the camera shoots at a little bit much at time, which can cause some very small issues. But for most cases, it's actually a perfectly serviceable mode. I never really find myself using it though, because I find slowing down to 60 FPS shots to be slow enough for anything I shoot. And if I want to shoot 4K 120, I'm honestly probably just going to use the Z8. Now the Pocket Tree does claim to have a HD 240 FPS mode. However, it's basically line skip rubbish, and it is also limited to the Rec 709 standard color profile as well. And that's why if you're going to shoot slow motion, just shoot the 4K 120 and don't bother with the HD 240 FPS. It just looks like trash. Now the battery in the Pocket Tree is honestly quite small, and you can run out of battery pretty quick on this. There is a battery handle you can buy, but I actually don't have it. Instead, I've been relying on the USB-C power delivery fast charge, which works really well. You can throw like 50% charge into this in no time at all if you've got a really good USB-C fast charger. But that doesn't work if you're out and about, so when I'm running around shooting, I actually use a small battery bank to keep it topped up, or I use my Tri-Charge, which is used to store my Nikon batteries, but it can also be used with its USB-C output to keep the Pocket running on the go. Now the inbuilt mics in the Pocket Tree are actually surprisingly good. It uses a 3-mic array for ambient sound, and it actually sounds halfway decent in good conditions. If you use it in windy conditions, it does tend to fall apart because it picks up a lot of wind noise, as you would expect for small little internal mics like these. Now if you want to use external mics on this camera, there are actually a couple of options. You can use USB-C mic adapters, and that allows you to connect an external microphone that way. But the real audio feature for the Pocket Tree is being able to pair it directly with the DJI Mic 2 transmitters without any receiver needed. Now using the DJI Mic 2 gives you a lovely wireless lav mic option, but to get the best quality out of it, you do need a little bit of setup. So in the mic settings, make sure you turn on the video to audio sync, and also make sure to have the internal 32-bit float recording on the mic transmitter itself on. This will let you capture the best quality audio possible inside the mic as a backup. Also in the settings of the Mic 2, make sure to turn off any noise reduction, as the noise reduction is very powerful, and I think that the audio sounds like ass with it on. If you need noise reduction in your audio, like the video features, you make sure to do it in post as you get better results that way. And then lastly in the Pocket Tree, make sure to turn on the built-in mic backup recording option as well. Now what this does is it records the internal microphones on the Pocket Tree to a separate audio file. And then with all these audio tracks in post, once you synchronize everything, you can combine them all together to get a really nice audio mix. So with the Pocket Tree, with its 32-bit recording, you can get a lovely voice track once you plug a lav mic into it and you're not mounting it like here on your shirt, because that looks ridiculous and stupid. Please stop doing that, people. So when you have your proper lav mic hooked in, you've got your 32-bit float audio recording for voice. You then have your ambient recording in the Pocket, you sync it all up, and then you can get some absolutely lovely audio quality out of the Pocket Tree. The 32-bit float recording internally in the Mic 2 is absolutely lovely to work with as well, as it practically can't clip audio. This will always give you a perfect recording to sync to later. As for the quiet parts, you can just bring up the audio, and for the loud parts, you can just bring it down without losing any quality. That is the magic of 32-bit float recording. Now, because the Mic 2 transmitter, when connected directly to the Pocket 3, uses Bluetooth, I actually consider the audio recorded in the video file this way to be scratch audio, and that the main audio track is recorded internally. Here it sounds. I'll probably just switch between the internally recorded transmitted track as well as the 32-bit float being recorded, and I'll mix in some of the ambient windy track as well, because it's very windy out. Now, recently I have actually started using timecode for a lot of my video projects, and the Pocket 3 does have timecode input. Now, it uses a special USB-C cable that you can jam sync the timecode onto the Pocket 3. The clocks in the Pocket 3 are not really accurate enough to maintain perfect sync all the time when using timecode. You have to jam sync it like every few hours at least to keep the drift down to a minimum when using this. However, for the kind of usage I'm doing, where I'm only using it to kind of synchronize the audio and keep things in line, and I'm not speaking directly to the camera, I found the timecode to work out more than enough, and having a few frames of drift really isn't that big of an issue unless there's a person speaking to camera, where any drift immediately becomes super obvious. Now, you might have noticed that my Pocket 3 has got a few dings and chunks gone out of it. And this is because I may have dropped it something like 5 times onto concrete. Now, each time I have dropped it, it has been in its case, which has definitely saved it. So if you're walking around with this, make sure to keep it in the case when you're not using it. But in fairness though, it has survived all the drops and it still works perfectly. Once I clipped the casing back together, because it had popped apart at one point and I could see the battery, so I just sort of clicked it back together and it seems to be working still. Now, one nice thing about the Pocket 3 being criminally popular is that a lot of third parties are making some really interesting accessories for it. I have this really nice KNF concept base that just clips onto the bottom and plugs into the USB port, while also adding an Arca Swiss compatible base and GoPro mounts as well. But there are a lot of options out there for this thing, and there's mounting options now for practically any situation. In fact, there's even 4th axis stabilization and suction cup mounts for mounting this on cars. There's some really cool accessories popping up out there for people who want to mount this thing kind of everywhere. And why wouldn't you with that image quality? Now, as much as I've been gushing over this camera, it isn't perfect, and I would like to see a few improvements in the next version, or maybe DJI could make the Pocket Pro, because I think a bigger, chunkier Pro version with a dual camera system or even triple cameras from the Mavic 3 drone on this would be particularly awesome. Having a telephoto camera on this would be particularly cool. Now, I would actually really like a proper timecode implementation in the Pocket 3 because the current one is quite poor. What I want is the ability to have a proper timecode input connected all the time, like a 3.5mm audio jack that can read the timecode signal from the generator and then implement that in metadata in the video file. The reason I want this is because jam syncing the Pocket 3 every so often is just not reliable enough for many shooting situations. Other than the timecode implementation, I don't really think the Pocket 3 has many other flaws. It is a great camera. It's had good firmware updates so far that have fixed a lot of the issues already, and now it works really great. And I haven't even covered a lot of the other features on this, like the glamour shooting modes, the panning time lapses you can do with the gimbal, and a bunch of other stuff like photos and panorama stitchings and all kinds of things. But for a creator like me that only uses the core video features, the Pocket 3 is pretty close to perfect, once you account for the actual limitations that a camera like this will always have, because as I've said before, you can't cheat physics.